Hmm. Hello, my name is Sophie Holder, Executive Officer at De Montfort University, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you to another talk in our anti-racism series. Now, the anti-racism series is a set of lectures, presentations, and discussions that focus on issues of race as they relate to different fields in academia and beyond, as well as ways to oppose and counter racial prejudice and systemic racism. For our talk today, I am so excited to have this guest as part of our International Women History Month event, as we are being joined by the founder and CEO of Cocoa Girl and Cocoa Boy magazine, Serlina Boyd. Now, I do know a little bit about how and why the magazine started, but I want to leave that to our speaker to elaborate on. What I can say is that Cocoa Girl had a phenomenal start, reaching a circulation of 10,000 copies within the first 4 weeks of being printed. It also won the Newcomer Award at the Independent Awards in 2020 and Launch of the Year at the BSME Awards. Before Cocoa Girl, Serlina was, and still is, a qualified childcare provider and had worked in the publishing industry for 18 years. By starting the magazine, it really gave her the opportunity to combine her interest in children and the media. And today, I cannot wait for us to hear more about Serlina, her career in publishing as a Black woman in a white-dominated space, and her work with Cocoa Girl. Please note that there will be a questions and answers section after Selina's presentation, so be sure to write any questions in the chat box and we will get through as many as we can at the end. But without further ado, please let me again welcome Serlina Boyd, who will be talking about her journey in publishing and the rise of Cocoa Girl magazine.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to come and just speak about my journey. It's a long journey, so I hope that I won't bore you with my story, but it's always good, I feel, to share your story and your journey because that can encourage others who may be going through something a little bit similar. So my journey started probably about 18 years when it comes to um, publishing. I was a publisher, actually a graphic designer in for many years. I started off as a junior designer, but always found that it was really hard to climb that career ladder. Um, Even when I was doing, I felt some great things within my industry. And one of the stories I will tell you about in a minute, it always felt as if I always had to keep proving myself, proving what I can do. So just starting off on my journey, I at school was not really a great student. I was told by my teacher that my E grades were normal for somebody that looked like me. And this was the last year before I took my actual GCSEs. And my father, hearing that, was so saddened. And he said to me, "Look, Selena, I believe that you can do better. And I'm going to do what I can do in this year to help you get those GCSEs." And because my dad believed in me, and I didn't want to listen to the teacher that told me that I was just going to get E grades, in my GCSEs, I decided to really work hard. And I did just that when I got my GCSE results. I could not believe that these results belong to me. I'm not an A grade student, but I got lots of Bs. And, my teacher could not believe that I was the same girl that she predicted wasn't going to do very well. But I say this to say that I tell you that because when I, was at secondary school, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I was older. I didn't see anything on the TV that made me want to become that person. There were no prominent role models that looked like me. I just had school and my family, and all my 9 aunties were nurses. There's nothing wrong with that. But I thought I was just going to go along and become a nurse too, or work in a nursery like my mum. But not only did I have my dad as my role model at the time, but I also had a teacher that saw something in me. And this is another teacher, and he said to me, you know what, why don't you pursue a career in graphic design? And I didn't know what he was talking about at the time. I didn't know what a graphic designer was. So I remember in that year where I had one teacher that told me that I wouldn't really amount to anything, I had another teacher that told me you could be a graphic designer. And I decided to listen to the teacher that told me that I could be something that seemed interesting. So I went and I researched graphic design, as well as trying to study hard to get those GCSEs that I actually did. And I just fell in love with the subject. I, said, right, I'm going to study a degree eventually in graphic design. And that's what I did. I got a good grade. I got a 2-1 at the end of the day. Um, and that's how my graphic design career started. Coming into the working environment and trying to find a job was the hardest thing, but I was not going to give up. I remember approaching a graphic design firm and said, look, I'll work for free. Please just give me some experience, because I've just found that everywhere I was going, I needed experience before I could get the job. And I remember working for a company called One Spare Chair. They gave me my first job. It was based in East London. And I was then able to get experience to go into the design world. And the path I chose was magazine design. And as I said, that was 18 years ago. So one of my first magazine titles was Woman Magazine. It's a weekly magazine. It's still going today. But with the magazine world, things kind of, I think that magazine, actually, no, I went on to another magazine after that, which was called Hair Magazine. But that was later sold, and I had to find another job. And I remember being in a publishers that they launched magazines for airlines. So I was working on Singapore Airways. That was my client when I worked for a company called Sparfax. But even though I was doing really well in my other jobs, I was given so much responsibility. This new job, I was back down to being a junior designer. I wasn't being given any work. I was actually just asked to Photoshop lots of different pictures, and it just was a lot of tedious things to do every single day, when I knew that I could do so much. I could offer the business or company so much more. So nobody does this, but I thought, right, I'm going to go down to see my MD and tell him that I could do more for this company. And I remember going into the MD's office shaking and saying, look, this is the experience that I've had, but I'm not getting, to show what I can really do in this company. Can I have a bit more responsibility? And with that, he said, right, I'm going to take you somewhere. And on the following Monday, he took me to the offices of Virgin Atlantic and said to the team there, right, you need a magazine in 2 weeks. This young lady is going to deliver that for you. And in my brain, I was thinking, I know I said that I wanted a bit more responsibility, but this was not what I was talking about. How on earth am I going to deliver a magazine which is about 100 pages in 2 weeks? That is unheard of. But I work day and night, no sleep. I have a permanent wrist injury, but I did it. I did it. And with that, I launched the magazine Vera on board Virgin Atlantic, and it's still on board today. Even doing that, I still found it really hard to progress in the industry. I remember going for a job interview as art editor, sorry, for Harper's Bazaar magazine. And I remember sitting in the waiting room or waiting area in the reception, And the art director came downstairs, saw me, looked at me, turned around and walked back up the stairs. And I knew it was him because I'd researched him. I knew who he was. So I was like, oh, maybe I don't have the interview. And he came back, he said, could you come? And he interviewed me in the corridor, which is not upstairs, but he said he couldn't take me upstairs for some unknown reason. But he interviewed me where everybody was going to the lifts to go upstairs. And I remember with tears in my eyes and my portfolio just falling to the ground. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. And I left that interview and I left my entire career in graphic design. And I felt a bit deflated, but I thought, right, what do I do next? So at that time, I had a 1-year-old little girl, and I thought, I'm going to be a childminder. I'm going to combine my art skills and my love for children because I really love children. And I thought, right, I'm going to be a childminder. So I studied the course, passed, and before I knew it, I had this thriving mini nursery in my home. And I had the council saying, why is it that everybody wants to come to your setting? What is it that you've got going on there that you can help with other childminders in the area? And I just felt like, well, all I'm doing is, loving these children. And also I combine a little bit of my art in my activities and I make the setting really fun. And the council was so impressed. They said, right, we've got this massive building and it was the size of a school. And they said, we want to give that to you. And we want you to open your own nursery. I had a playground, I had a field. It was beautiful. And my whole goal was to open a nursery setting, but also cater for parents that had children with SEN, special educational needs. And that we would have a respite centre within our school where parents can come and rest, and my team would take care of their children. This happened just before COVID. So I remember I was about to sign the papers for the contract, and the COVID announcement was made by, I think it was Boris Johnson at the time, that childcare providers needed to shut. And that meant my entire business, my entire plans was gone. I had nothing. And I am the sort of person that if anything bad happens, I try to be a little bit positive and think, right, I'm not going to panic. And I didn't panic. I then thought, right, what do I do now? I have to homeschool. I have no income. And I have now 2 children that need their mummy. And I have some time on my hands. I've never had time on my hands for a very long time. Even when my daughter was born, I remember going back to work when she was 4 months old because I was still working um, at Virgin, and I still wanted to make sure that the magazine was being produced and published in the way that I wanted it to. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to panic. I'm just going to do a project. Actually, before we decided to do the project, I said, right, let's go to the shops. This is my daughter, and let's see if we can get some materials for you to homeschool with. So we were looking for exercise books. We were looking for art materials, anything that could keep her entertained for what I thought was a couple of weeks. I didn't know lockdown would be as long as it was. And I remember going to the supermarket and thinking, right, I see some exercise books, but I just don't want Faith to just have a boring time at home just doing exercise books. Let's see if we can find a magazine that speaks to her and affirms her and talks about her culture, talks about how beautiful her hair is, her skin is, because Faith at the time was going through a really hard time at school. She was the only girl in her class that looked like her. And with that came a little bit of bullying. So I was always careful about what I put in front of her. And I remember standing there with my daughter and thinking, okay, there's a lot of magazines here, but none of them actually speak to her. None of them affirm her. Every magazine here makes her want to be somebody else. So she had always spoken to me about having frozen girl hair, because that's all she really saw on the, TV or on magazine covers. It was no one with hair that was like her hair. So I scratched my head and I said, right, should we go home and do a little bit of a project? I can't see a magazine that I want you to have here. And just something I wanted to point out, which I haven't pointed out, is in my community, I would say, a lot of parents, from doing a survey as well, they mainly choose the magazines for their children. Whereas in other cultures, the children choose whatever they want in terms of what they want to read. But we have to be mindful about everything our children are exposed to, because we don't know what type of effect it's going to have on them. And that comes as well with magazines. So you'll find that there was a big market that no one tapped into of children who weren't really buying magazines. So I didn't know that at the time. I just, as a mother, said, right, let's go home, Faith, and do a project. And this project, we had Faith on the front cover because I couldn't find anyone else. It was locked down. My husband's a photographer, so it was easy for us to put a front cover together. And when I saw the front cover and I saw the design, I thought, man, this looks really good, if I say so myself. And I then approached a publisher now, somebody who I had worked for many years with. And I said to them, look, I'm thinking about doing this magazine as a project, putting it out there in the world. I've made a little mini, makeshift website in GoDaddy. Took me 5 minutes. What do you think? I'm reckoning. I reckon about 20 people would want me to publish this. But what do you think? Does it have some potential? And he said to me, I'm not sure, Serlina. He said, you know, I don't want to tell you this, but there ain't any advertiser that's going to really advertise to Black people. Um, how will you sustain a magazine like this? And I thought, I'm not listening to you. Like I did with that teacher that told me I'm an E grade student. I didn't really listen to her. I'm going to just go for it. And I remember when I wanted to just introduce it to the world, we had the I won't say the death, the murder of George Floyd. And I'm like, man, I can't release this now. This is just not appropriate. Until a book that I had published a year before called Cocoa Girl. It got a little bit of TV presence. We were on Channel 5 News with it. We sold about 200 copies at our launch party. But somebody who had my book, out of the blue, it was an influencer, she posted it on her page, and people were liking the book and said, oh wow, this is, someone said, if you want to just celebrate, Black children, and if you want to read a beautiful book, read this book. So when I saw that people, and it wasn't a lot, but when people were liking that book that I had published, I thought, right, this is a great time to launch Cocoa Girl. So I remember it was a Friday, and normally on a Friday, at a certain time, I switch off my devices, my phone, my computer, and I have a bit of a rest period. But I remember putting this magazine up on the Friday, and I kept hearing bing, 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 bing. And I thought, what's that? Maybe the kids have uploaded something onto my device. Maybe it's a game. But when I looked, as I was just about to turn my phone off, just to have my rest period, I had thousands upon thousands of people liking the image of the magazine cover, but also buying the magazine on my website. And you've got to think about this. They hadn't seen what was going inside. All they saw was a magazine cover. All they saw was an image of my daughter. The magazine cover had her holding a lollipop. That was it. And that is all they saw. And this cover was selling. I remember thinking, oh my goodness, what is going on? We are going completely viral. And then it wasn't long before we were contacted by BBC News. They just said, look, we want to come, we've been hearing about your magazine. And I was like, what magazine? I've just got the front cover. I've not done it yet. Oh my goodness, I've got how many orders for this magazine? That means that it really has to happen. That means that I have to actually design what's going on inside the magazine. And I remember the BBC saying, look, we just want to do an internet piece on you. We just want to interview your daughter. Obviously, you know, she's the editor. And we want to just put this on our website, and that's that. So I remember the BBC coming to my home, and we filmed it. I didn't even get dressed or properly. I was just, you know, normal, because it's only going on a website. I brushed my daughter's hair a bit. And about a week later, the producer, Amanda, calls us and says, the entire world wants your story. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she says, well, the film piece that we've done, which was meant to be for our website, we've shown it to our top bosses here at the BBC, and everybody wants your story. We're talking about Italy, the US. And before I knew it, the next day, our story was on the news for the entire day. And what brought me to tears was children who, I think by the time it got on the news, the magazine was printed now, and it was getting into the hands of children. And when children were talking about how the magazine was making them feel and the topics we touched on uh, subjects like vitiligo. We did a really lovely first magazine. And these children were speaking from the heart. They had never seen anything like that before. It's the first time they felt seen. I was watching this news piece, crying my eyes out, because I did not believe that this E grade, or, you know, my teacher said I'll be an E grade student, wouldn't really amount to anything, but this person was actually making an impact on the world the way that I was. I just didn't, these things don't happen to me. And I couldn't believe as well that there was so much interest from all over the world. We were getting as well WhatsApp messages from an anonymous person who had got the magazine, and she was flicking through it and just saying how she loved the content. Again, that went viral. But the biggest thing that really shocked me was the fact we were on Access Hollywood. And I used to watch Saved by the Bell religiously. I loved that program. I can't remember the presenter, but one of the actors on Saved by the Bell, he was introducing me and saying, "Hey, we have a girl from America, from England. Her name is Serlina, and she's done this phenomenal magazine." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what is happening?" Fast forward, because I know I've only got 20 minutes and I've gone on, but fast forward today, we are, I think, in a majority of schools now. Our brand partner or publishing partner within schools is the biggest educational publisher, Pearson. Our readership has gone from 0 to 2.1 million children just because we're in schools. Um, we have made an impact, I would say. We're the first Black children's magazine in the UK. We are in America. If you go to Times Square, you'll be able to pick up a copy of Coca Girl in Barnes and Noble. But I feel the biggest thing that I'm really proud of today is not how many people know about my brand, is not how many children pick up the magazine, but it's how my daughter absolutely loves who she is. absolutely loves her culture, knows what she wants to do. She's actually a mayor at a place called Kidzania, which is a city for children. It's actually seeing the impact of my children, my son, who celebrates his sister, who knows about his culture. Just one magazine and the journey that we've had has had not only an impact on the children who read it around the world, but my children have been, impacted in a positive way from this magazine. Um, there's so much to talk about, but I just wanted to share that. It's just going back to the point of when the publisher told me that no advertiser would want to work with me. So today we have partnered and we work with the likes of Nike. We have a partnership with Disney for 2023. We are working with Lego, Barbie, LOL dolls. The list goes on. Warner Brothers. I just wanted to give the message that, firstly, my dad, as you know, has been one of my biggest role models. If you have a problem, sell the solution. There are many problems in the world, but you might have the solution for one of those many problems. And secondly, never listen to when someone wants to tell you something negative about yourself. You can't do this and you can't do that. Go for it. Do it. Um, I don't know where I get that drive from. I guess it is my dad, where I don't like to hear the word no. I'm going to try and do it and go for it. Um, in life, I realized that for somebody like me, there's a lot of doors that have closed in my face, but there are a lot of doors that have now opened. And that's because I've not stood at the door and just accepted that it's closed. I've actually gone, knocked, gone again and again until I see what I or have what I want. Sometimes those doors may not open. Try another door. But don't accept sometimes no when you have got something you have to share to the world. Um, I hope I haven't been waffling on and talking. I felt a little bit nervous, but I guess I hope that this story and my story has helped you to realize what you can do. I was just an ordinary, and I still am an ordinary girl from South London that had a dream, and that dream was to see my daughter celebrated in a way that I hadn't seen her celebrated. And I guess my advice to you would be, now, if there is a problem in the world, how are you going to solve it? How are you going to come up with the solutions? Um, if anyone has, I know I've been talking for a long time, but if you have any questions, let me know.
No, you've been so inspiring. You haven't waffled whatsoever. I've just been really inspired. I'm sure the people watching have been really inspired by your journey. And I just want to pick up on various things that you have said throughout your talk. So we'll just go into some questions about that. So I guess the first one was when you were talking about feeling that you had to prove yourself in your workplace when you kind of first went into publishing. Do you think as women, and I guess as Black women, that we have to prove ourselves in workplaces, or is that a trap? Or do you think part of it is necessary to do?
I feel like when you walk into that office, people have this opinion of you straight away. And I feel that it's so funny. I've just come from a massive event which talks about imposter syndrome and how um, a lot of Black women have that when they walk into offices. They're like, well, how did I get here? But one thing that stuck with me that the lecturer was talking about was he doesn't like the word imposter syndrome. It's about the people in the room having to change. So, for instance, just going on to an incident that happened to me when I worked for Hair magazine, I came back from lunch um, to find a picture of all the Disney princesses stuck behind my desk. But that was before the time there was a black Disney princess. I looked at it, but I didn't say anything until one of the girls in the office said, Selena, the reason why we put that picture there is because we think Walt Disney he's a bit racist, and we don't really feel like there is a black queen or there could be a black princess. And my response to her was telling her about the princesses and queens in history she never knew about that were black. And also telling her that I don't need Disney. This was way back before I did this magazine. I don't need Disney to dictate to me my excellence, my beauty, and what my worth is.
Mhm,
Um, and so I feel as if we've got to get out of the mindset now, because we've conditioned our mind to believe this as well, by the way we have been treated. Get out of the mindset that you do not belong somewhere. You have to go into these environments knowing that you belong. Um, Separate the facts from lies. So sometimes we tell ourselves things that are not necessarily true as well. And go in there. If you have gotten the job, go in there and don't feel like you have to prove anything. Be you. If that job doesn't want you, then you may have to move on somewhere else. But be you and show them what you can do just naturally.
mhm. I love the idea of separating the facts from the feelings, because our feelings can be so dominant and they can feel like they're real, and we have to separate it out. And I definitely agree with that. If you've gotten the job, if you've met the criteria, and I've had a friend say this to me, she worked in HR, and she was saying, when people get the interview, you get the interview because they already think you can do the job. If
That's
they
right.
don't think you're going to can do the job, they're not going to you're not going to get the interview. So have faith in yourself that if you do get the job, they believe in you. You need to believe in yourself. That's so important. I want to move on from that a little bit. So in terms of various jobs and various different careers, how important has it been for you to highlight a variety of careers and professions that
Mm.
children can go into? Because I think it's so interesting and common that what you said in terms of all of your aunts were nurses, and definitely I've definitely seen the black community, there's doctors, teachers, lawyers, all these careers that seem like the only avenue, but
Right.
others don't. So why has it been so important for you to kind of really open up the idea of what a child can be and what they can aspire to?
Yeah, it's so important. I think, for instance, my daughter, she is 9. Already she's been an editor. Now she's a mayor. She's a coder. Because of the fact that I didn't just give her the option of just, you know, I think she's had the magazine and she's been able to flick through and see all these incredible role models and think, wow, okay, I can do that. I never had that, and a lot of our generation never had that. So I always feel there's a lot of talented people in roles that they don't necessarily want to be in, but
Mhm,
they never saw anything different. We've got a new generation now of children that not only my magazine is showcasing, but I love lots of organizations that are doing things to showcase, black talent
mhm,
within their organizations. But I choose to work with, like, for instance, the likes of Pokemon. We had a partnership with them where they showed us all the people that look like the children that read our magazine and what they do, what different roles they have. Now children have options, and it's important for them to have options, for them to know exactly what they can do and not just have limitations
mhm.
on their talents. So I feel it's so important, but showing what children can do and be from when they're young. That's why you cannot be what you cannot see. It's you can only be what you see, basically. And if you're constantly seeing crime and people that look like you not in great positions, then what are you going to be? It's now time to show children the future.
Okay. So let's say that children are reading the magazine, they're reading Coco Girl, they're reading Coco Boy, and they're seeing all of these various different jobs and roles that they can take on, but yet they're in a school environment that you were in where people aren't believing in them, where people are saying, a D is a really good grade, and you shouldn't really expect anything more from yourself. What can children do and parents do to really counter those messaging that they're getting?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, for instance, when my daughter was going through her problems at school, um, I did my best to be on the board, to be, talking to the teachers about representation. This is before George Floyd. Representation with books. They just did not let me in. Um, and so I removed Faith and I homeschooled her. So that's not um everyone's choice. They can't do that. I really feel if a school is not doing what you want them to do, never be afraid to use your voice.
Hmm.
Um, but also, if a school is failing, then talk to your local authority about it. Make sure that someone comes in and makes a difference. But first, you've got to use your voice. Don't be afraid to use your voice. When I first spoke out about my daughter's school and the failings there, I was in the area seen as a troublemaker, oh, here she comes. But those same people are thankful now that I've done the magazine.
Hmm.
So when you first start using your voice, you might not be the most popular person, but when people see a change as a result of you using your voice, um, you know, their attitudes to you will change. Another thing, with the magazines, we work with schools really closely. We don't just go and give the magazines and leave.
Hmm.
I actually go in and do workshops. I do workshops with the teachers and parents, so we're building a relationship there. We have a section in the magazine which is for parents and teachers, how you can use this resource to bring, people together. Um, so it's not just a case of us putting the magazines and it helping the children, it also helps the teachers and the parents as well.
Okay. I really love that idea because at De Montfort University, we have a project that's called Decolonizing DMU, which is trying to address the awarding gap because they're saying that children from Black and other ethnic minoritized groups are awarded lower grades in university.
Wow.
Two, so they were seen as good grades, 2-1 first, but the majority or statistics that show who are getting those grades are white students. So it's so
Mhm.
important to be creating and setting up projects and programs that are really trying to address this. And I'm really glad that you were talking about not just giving over the magazine, but actually getting involved because there is such a role for parents to play in terms of, and I think it's something that you're very aware of as someone as color. I know I am as well, that you can't just rely on the schools. As parents, unfortunately, we have to be very involved. We have to know what's going on. We have to know and what the children are being taught and all of these things because it's just so important.
But just something else to pick up on, even though I homeschool my children or my husband helps me to do that, it doesn't mean so my 5-year-old has never gone to school.
Okay.
But he watched something the other day, number blocks. And he said to me, we were going swimming, he looked at his he said, "Mummy, I don't want to be brown today." I thought, "Oh, here we go. What's this about?" And he said, I said, "Well, why did you say that?" He said, I watched on number blocks, Mummy, that the number block grey didn't want to be grey today. So it's not just school. It's, sometimes what they're watching on TV,
Mm.
they're looking at them. So, you've got to be so careful what you put in front of your children. Now, it could be purely innocent, but children are picking up things from everywhere,
Mhm.
everywhere. So, yeah, it's holistically what's going on at home and what's going on in the school you've got to look at.
Okay. So we've talked about, I guess, primary school age, and now thinking that I'm working at a university, and now children are leaving university with their degrees, with their qualifications. And something that you said that I thought was really interesting and is really shows the state that we're in now. You come out of university with the qualification, you're looking for a job, but no one wants to give it to you because you don't have the experience. And was that, well, I've been going to get the qualifications, but now we want you to have the experience. You were really advocating for yourself, seeing what was out there, what opportunities, what would you say for students to be able to kind of pick up on those opportunities when they graduate? Because I think for so long we've thought, oh, the degree is what's going to help me. But then when you start putting it on your CV, you're like, well, actually, now I need to have all these other things that are going to make me sellable in the marketplace.
Yeah, I really believe that they need to find either a role model or mentor that even when you're doing your degree or whatever qualification you're doing at university, find a role model or mentor that can help you get to that next level. So, for instance, when I worked for One Spare Chair, and that was my first design job, it wasn't a lot of money, but Craig gave me the opportunity. I actually saw Craig on the TV and he had won a diversity award for something. I researched him, found out the company, and he was able to give me that experience. He saw another person that looked like him and wanted me to get me that help. And that's one advice that I would say. I've got a list of organizations that help young people from university age to go to be connected with mentors in the industry, in banking, and whatever they want to do. I work with I've got a really good friend, Andre Spence, that's what he does. He spends his days and he's actually developing an app where young people can connect to mentors within the industry that they want to be in. And that is my biggest advice.
Okay, great. And when people get themselves into those spaces, and I say specifically for women because we're two women talking here, how should a woman know when to advocate for themselves? Because you were saying you're working somewhere, they weren't giving you things in line with your skills and your ability, and you took the initiative to go and say to, a line manager, someone who's superior, I'm not being used to my full potential. I want to do more. How should women know when to have those conversations, and I guess the right way to have them?
Yeah, I think if you go in there straight away, you've been given something to do, and it's not to your liking. I don't think that's the when you should do it, just when you've arrived. I think leave it for a year, see how the role is going, understand everything that you need to be doing. But if after that year it just seems like the same, it seems like, for me, it wasn't that I was not only just getting hardly anything to do. In that time I was there, I had an intern. I hired an intern. Um, as a junior designer, I was allowed to have an intern to come and help me with certain things, and that intern was promoted above me.
Wow.
And so that's when I was like, "Nah, this is not going to work." I've always been somebody as well that's never been afraid to talk up. I
Mhm.
do it in the right way. Um, but I knew that I couldn't get to my editor, I couldn't get to my art director. So I went and saw the MD, and I think he had a lot of respect, but he wanted to throw me in the deep end. And I proved I could do it. I could swim.
Okay, so how do women, because I think you've talked about it various times in your story, and you said at the beginning, oh, I'm not really sure where it came from, but how did you pull on that internal strength so many times through your career? So from the time when you're advocating for yourself with the managing director, from the time when you're doing a magazine within a 2-week period, when you feel like, okay, I found the thing, I'm gonna work in nurseries, I'm gonna work in childcare, the pandemic happens. How do you pull on that internal strength to see a situation that might seem scary or hopeless, but then turn it into something else?
I think, do you know what? Again, at this event that I went to, the lecturer was saying, for Black people, we've gone through a lot. We've gone through so much. One thing that I didn't tell you is that Stephen Lawrence went to my school. So I saw him as, when he was murdered, I was a first year. I've gone through a lot of experiences that I'm not going to allow to break me, but to build me up as a strong person. And I feel it's those experiences and things that I've gone through, the rejections, the no's. I remember at that same school, the teacher that said I was an E grade student gave me a certificate. On the certificate, it was Serlina switched on the computer. She thought I was that. So, and I've never forgotten that. People will say, "What's your, your childhood memory?" That's one thing I've got a certificate, and it says for logging on the computer. So it's all those experiences. It's meant to make you stronger and more determined to say, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to do. I'm going to speak up. Never be afraid to use your voice. A lot of people will not use their voice and they will take things for many years. But I didn't want to do that. So I think, yeah, experience. But the death of Stephen Lawrence really, really affected me. And that's when I first started school.
That, do you know, it's not funny that you say that, but that really affected me. And I think I was 4 when it happened. And I remember saying that as a 4-year-old, I still remember that being a thing that our parents were like, gather around the TV. You need to watch this. This is important. And how it really changed the trajectory of so many Black children in the United Kingdom. And for Stephen's parents, his mother, Baroness Doreen Lawrence, was also worked at the university and also started the Stephen Lawrence Research Centre. And a woman who was just saying, I'm not going to let my voice be silenced. I am going to speak about this until change has been made. So thank you for that. So a line that you said that really stood out to me was, every magazine that Faith looked at wanted her to be someone else. And I think that you are definitely trying to change the trajectory of that for children. But how have you found adults to kind of feel about the magazine? Because from what I've seen, I don't just see it's children who are feeling empowered by it. There's a lot of adults, when I look on your Instagram and on the various social media, like, I wish I'd had that. This is so important. So how have you seen adults to be affected by the magazine?
It's so funny. I think our readership is more adults as well, because they've wished that they had this publication when they were younger, and they're learning about their Black history. So the last issue we had Mansa Musa in there. He was the richest person in history, and he was Black. The BBC did a little animation on it, and they were like, "Why are these things not in history?" He shut down Cairo's financial system because he was just giving out gold. And when parents read this, some parents, they subscribe for the magazine for their children, but then they can't wait for their children to finish for it so they can read and find out history. This next issue, we were able to bag an exclusive with Jada. And I was umming and
Jada Pinkett Smith, for those who might not know, yeah.
Yeah, Jada Pinkett Smith. And I was umming and ahhing just because of certain things that were happening in the media. But I wanted to, her knowledge of history is phenomenal. The world doesn't know about it. The world does not know. She has got this knowledge. And she's just done a series on Netflix about African queens in history that I never knew of. Queen Nzinga, all these queens that we don't know. So when people know their history, and that's something that the magazine provides in a really, easy to read way. We normally make the font a little bit bigger than normal magazines, and we always do these little breakouts. Did you know? So parents and children enjoy reading it. But when people know their history, they can know where they're going because they know where they came from. They know the struggles, just so that we can be here today. So we've had a phenomenal response. It's been so lovely to see.
Okay. So the response that you've had from people about the magazine, it seems like you're constantly using that feedback, because you talked about using statistics and data. But the really interesting fact you said is, for families from, at least from the Black community, from what you've seen, is that they will buy magazines for their children, whereas in maybe like white European communities, their children are choosing it for them. How important has it been to use those statistics and data and the feedback to influence the magazine? What role does that information use in the magazine?
Yeah, statistics are really important, especially when you want to know if, the magazine, the content is working. So I always make sure that we have Zoom sessions. We've got about 52 children on our books who write the content, age 7 to 11, and we get the parents involved. And we might have a topic. Okay, this month is explore. What should we do? And the children will say, right, I want to explore what's happening in the environment. We don't really talk about that as a community, the environment, but one little girl has chosen to do that. And one other girl, I want to explore friendship. I'm going to write about my best friend. She wears a hijab. She hasn't had a good experience at school. I want children to know why she wears that. And, so having these sort of groups where I can fall back on and talk to really helps us to elevate the magazine even more. And also when I go into events like I did last week, where I was talking to 200 civil servants, they were in the court system, the education system, all of them now are wanting to help elevate the magazine even more. For some of them, they hadn't heard about the magazine. So that's, again, having conversations with them. What can you add to it? So I see the magazine as something that it's a community effort because we've got people involved, and also we are, firsthand getting children to write the content.
I love that. I love that children are involved from the writing to the editing and just various stages, because I think it helps to keep it current for the target audience that you're writing for. So in terms of the phenomenal rise of Cocoa Girl, I think we can definitely call it that. You have people who are involved, people who are wanting to partner with you, but because it has risen so quickly, what are some of the things that you had wished you'd known at the beginning of the process?
That's such a really good question. I wish I had known how to, in that first stage, track my finances properly, have an accountant on board straight away. My accountant was always there from my childcare business, but wasn't there at the beginning of Coco. So I think whenever you're doing something and it takes off really quickly, the first person you call is an accountant,
Okay.
lawyer as well. You're gonna need legal. But yeah, I just wish that I had that team that are here now,
Mhm.
but I wish they were there at the start, to kind of help me manage the business from that level. Um, I also wish that I knew that when PR agencies came and said, look, we want to work with you, but tell us all your ideas of how we can work with you. And then I start telling them my ideas and telling them my ideas. And the next minute I see my idea on a billboard or on a TV campaign. I go back to the brand and say, you've stolen my ideas. And they say, well, you didn't give us an NDA and you didn't copyright. I wish I'd known about NDAs and copyright in my ideas,
Mhm.
and knowing just how much information to give to brands
Mhm.
that want to work with you and partner with you.
And I guess that's really interesting because you're talking about the people who would take advantage of somebody who is starting out, and I guess it's trying to find their way because of the phenomenal success that they've had. So I think we've got time for about two more quick questions. So if someone is trying to go into the world of publishing and they're a person of color, what do they kind of need to be aware of, and how do they break down some of those barriers that they're going to face?
Yeah, I would say if you want to be a publisher, um, do it, because there's not enough of us. I would say research what you want to publish, because what I'm seeing now is there's a lot of books about Black girls and hair. There's a lot of them. If I get one more book, I love my hair. It's great. We've got books, but now it's time to think out of the box. So come up with books that are not there, because that's what we need. One book that I'm trying to publish now is a book on marriage,
Mm,
just their hidden secrets. How, and all I'm going to do with this book is have about 50 marriages, and they've been married for how long? What is the key to that? I want to know. Do you have a special, and that's not been done before. So if I would say, if you want to be a publisher, make sure that you're not just going to come out with books that are already there, that you're going to bring something new to the market, but something that we need. Um, my friend, she published a book recently, and it was about Black skin and certain things that we need, and it's not been done before. It's almost like a directory for Black skin.
Mhm.
Um, so there's so many problems within our community, and we still need the solution. So as I say, go for it. And message me if you need help starting your partnership.
I'm sure people will definitely message you about that. And I think that's so interesting because when you said black women in their hair, it actually reminded me of a friend who was going to start a podcast and speaking to a well-known producer. And they said, "Do you want to talk about black women in their hair?" And she said, I think that conversation has been done. Like we need to talk about something else. So I definitely agree with finding something that you're passionate about, but looking for a niche area that
Yeah.
hasn't necessarily been addressed. So my final question is, what is next for Coco Girl? You've had Jada Pinkett Smith on the cover, you had Michael B. Jordan, you've had Candice Brathwaite, you have had a whole host of people. What can we expect in terms of cover stars? Can you reveal some of the partnerships that you have coming on? Like, what can we expect from you and the magazine in the next couple of months, years?
Yeah, I think you're gonna so we're working on animation with this little girl. She is a character that I made up, Ashanti. I want to get that animation up and running, so I'm talking to a few people on that. But you're going to see some in-person events on a big, large scale. So with Disney, we're working on something huge. I can't really talk about it, but it's the world of film and children. And yeah, I just feel like there will be one of the biggest thing is our charity arm, which is called the Coco Dream Society. And that is, we're currently looking for a building so that we could have a creative arts center for children where they're learning how to be journalists. There are only 0.2% Black journalists in this country. We're trying to make sure we change those statistics, get children into music, into animation. But it's just going to be a really lovely hub. And as I said, or I don't know if I said before, but our partner, our charity partner is Disney. And it's going to take a long time to do what I want to do, but at least we're starting to have the talks and the ideas, and it's looking like a really, really exciting partnership. And the reason why we chose Disney, I think I was a little bit wary. Some things that Disney put out there, as I'm not 100% happy with at times. But I've seen recently they have been very inclusive where it comes to Black characters and
Mhm.
also to partnerships. So, good friends of mine, they run a photography service in America. They're called Creative Soul. Please check them out on Instagram. And what they do is they have, children um, just looking amazing, and they take these fantastic photographs with their hair, everything. It's just out of this world. Their USP is that no one else could do what they're doing. No, everybody, some people have tried, but they can't. And Disney have recently partnered with them and done a doll range, and
Mhm.
it's phenomenal. And that's what I love. Disney didn't run off with their idea; they actually listened and partnered with them,
Mhm.
um, and they opened that door for them. So there are going to be some exciting things with this partnership. Um, yeah, it's
Great.
that's it, really.
Thank you so much, Selena. It's been just an absolute pleasure to be able to talk to you, the work you're doing with Coco Girl, to hear about your story. It's been so amazing. I just want to say thank you to Selena on behalf of De Montfort University and the Anti-Racism series. We will have more events coming forward in the next few months, so make sure you stay tuned. But thank you for tuning in, and we hope you have a good day.